Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. If you like my video, please like and subscribe. Also check me out on Twitch as Floyd Mason.
Hello, welcome back, Spooks fans. We're back. We are back with our Goosebumps book review, and we are now on to book 3, Monster Blood. Third book in the series. This one spawned quite a few sequels, actually. It has 3 in the main series. I think there's at least 2 other ones in some of the later series, like the Horrorland and whatnot. I'm not super familiar with those ones yet. I haven't got to reading them, but I know this one kind of continued. So it's really the first kind of big ongoing arc that R.L. Stine created. And I mean, I'll be honest up front, lean into this one. This was one that I was not a big fan of as a kid. It wasn't. I didn't remember it being that great. There was some things I remember about it that we'll get into, but yeah, it's the start of a bigger kind of arc. It was also a weird one because it had a TV episode that was unique that they made with Monster Blood on a plane. Very odd one. We're not getting into the show, but very, very odd part to me. But who knows? Maybe I liked it more. Maybe I liked it more this time. Anyways, we also have the reprinted cover. I mean, again, I don't have the newer version, unfortunately. So these two are pretty similar. I quite like the colors of the original more. The blue and yellow. I get going with the green, kind of matching the Monster Blood of it all. But I don't know. I just don't like it quite as much. I prefer the original. I think the original is pretty decent. But yeah, let's get into the actual book. So this book is about a boy, Evan, who is sent to stay with his great aunt, somebody, one of his aunts, great aunt, I think, Catherine. His parents are going to look in Atlanta for a new place to live as they got a new job. They're moving, and for some reason they can't take him with them, I guess. It'd be too much to stay in a hotel. I guess they're going to be really busy. Don't want to drag him around. So he goes stay with his great aunt Catherine, who his father had stayed with when he was younger. So it's just kind of this, family member who is available and looks after them. Now, his great aunt is quite odd, and she is deaf and refuses to learn sign language. So basically, it's very difficult to communicate with her. Evan does take along his dog Trigger, who stays there as well, and kind of becomes a big part of the plot later. But it's basically them, and there's a couple other kids in the story. But as far as like the first story, there's a lot of characters, and these next two, there's very few. They're kind of set in a house, and it's the kids and the adult kind of with them that make up the main story. So I don't think we even see or hear of his dad in this one. He might say a thing or two, I can't quite remember. But his mom takes and drops him off, calls him on the phone at one point in the book. So it's basically those and the other kids, which we'll get to. So the book starts with the mom bringing Evan and dropping him off, and Evan not wanting to stay there, thinking his aunt's very odd. This book has a lot of very short chapters as well, and every chapter kind of tries to do this little hang off. I think it's one of the reasons why this book just doesn't stick as well, is it does the kind of TV break almost every chapter, but there's too many of them, and then it's almost like leading up to what's going on. Like, one of the early ones is that she shows up to the door with a meat cleaver, and it's like, oh, what's going on? But then the next paragraph is basically like taking you back and reminding you like a post-commercial thing of oh, she's got the meat cleaver still, and so yeah, you just told us this, which I feel just really makes this book a little repetitive. A lot of it seems to build up on these cliffhangers a little too much, but yeah, basically he gets there. She's weird. Mom's like, peace, like, sorry, whatever. Gotta go got this job in Atlanta. Got to go find a place, deal with it. And so it's just him, his Aunt Catherine, and there's a black cat living there as well, named Sarah Beth, and his dog Trigger. There's also a spoiler thing where she says she's going to take care of Trigger, and it just means putting him outside. Kind of some weaker, just kind of, trying to play up, oh, what's the next chapter? Which, to give Stein credit, it's one of those things that if you do the cliffhanger, it makes you want to keep reading it. And especially because the chapters are short. I think one chapter is 3 pages. This is the kind of book I could see myself as a kid. Probably just, I wouldn't put down. There's not like a spot where a chapter just goes, oh, and then Evan went to his room and thought about what happened. It's like, oh, and then Evan saw something in the corner of the eye, and like, well, I gotta see what that is. Like, there's only 4 pages in this chapter. So, in that way, as a kid's book, it makes sense. But yeah, Evan's there, he's pretty bored, goes out, takes Trigger for a walk, and he runs into Andrea, who goes by Andy, and that's kind of his only friend that he makes in this book. Other than her and the twins, who can't... Bamer? Can't remember their first names, though. But yeah, the Bamer twins are kind of the bullies, and so Andy becomes his only friend. He meets up with her. She needs to buy a gift for her cousin. So they go downtown, they go to kind of this weird toy store type thing, and in it, Evan finds a little vial of monster blood. Initially, the shopkeeper's super weird about it, won't sell it. Oh, you can't have it, it's not for sale, all this stuff. And then he's like, yeah, whatever, $2, which is so odd. It's such an odd interaction. Again, just trying to build up this thing of like, oh, it's you can't have it. It's a whole thing, and then just giving it away for basically nothing. But, sells it. They take it home. The aunt sees it, which I think will be relevant later, and just kind of like, oh, yeah, monster blood, whatever. And then they kind of go and they play with it, and it's kind of, it's almost described as almost like kind of a silly puttyish thing. You can like roll into a ball, and it sticks and bounces, and they throw it around and whatnot. And but as they're playing with it, Trigger eats some. So obviously, Evan kind of panics a bit. You never know what's toxic to a dog. Trigger seems okay, and they're just kind of like, okay, we're done playing with it for now, and they put it away. Yeah, there's, this book's kind of weird because like not a lot of stuff it's just kind of overlapping, and it builds off it. Like they go out, there's a part where he's getting picked on by the twins, and then they steal Andy's bike, and it's just kind of like she's like, oh yeah, like no, they're awful, like yep, that's the twins for you, and just kind of walks home. Andy goes home and he notices that Trigger is choking. It has to take the collar off, and like it's that first sign that something's happening, something weird is going on, and you see it at the start with Trigger, but basically Trigger is growing, so the monster blood kind of has this weird effect, and then it starts to grow itself. So Evan starts to realize, oh, it's growing, and he has to get a bigger jar for it, and then he kind of finally gets like Andy back, and he's like, oh, like take some of it, and they're trying to split it up, and it's just growing and growing like crazy. He goes out and sees Trigger, and Trigger has grown more. He's like double the size, I think it says. And then they kind of have some interactions with the twins, and Trigger being as big as it is, like he just chases them off. And then I'm kind of forgetting the order of some of this thing. Like a lot of the story really runs together to me. The twins at one point beat him up. They just pulverize him, which it goes really out of the way. Like I really feel like the bullies just don't. It was just to pad out some things. They're just kind of there. They steal a bike. They get chased off by Trigger. They beat him up, and then they're bad. They're bullies. But yeah, so it keeps on growing, and growing and growing, and so he kind of takes it into the basement. He puts it into a tub, to grow, and then he falls in. He can't get out. It's another big cliffhanger of like, oh my god, he's getting sucked into the tub, and then the next chapter he just somehow manages to pull himself out. So, they're finally like, we got to get rid of this stuff. We got to get rid of the monster blood. It's dangerous. It keeps growing. I can't remember exactly what they put it in. I think they put it in a trash bin at one point, but they put it in some kind of bag or something to carry it back to the store, and the store's out of business. And so it's like, oh, we can't do anything with it. So they're taking it back home, and it basically just grows and comes alive. So it turns into this big ball, and it's chasing them kind of back to the house. It runs over the twins and sucks them in, and that's kind of the end of their story. It's just their comeuppance. And then they finally get back, and this is where the kind of twist of the story happens. And it turns out that Sarah Beth the cat is a witch, hiding in the form of a cat, and she cursed Great Aunt Catherine, and she made her deaf and made her not able to learn sign language for whatever reason. I mean, it explains it at least, I guess, but yeah, it makes it so she can't make it. And the Great Aunt Catherine says that she made the monster blood. And now, she comes back. She kind of comes around. Like something about seeing the monster blood or just seeing that Evan's in danger causes her to kind of be able to break out of that trance a bit and kind of come to her senses. And stand up to Sarah Beth. But Sarah Beth still has control over the monster blood for some reason, and kind of commands it to kill them. One thing I do quite like about this book is it's a little like, again, I feel like at the start R.L. Stine was trying to find his footing, but he's a little more violent, which I like in the first ones. I think it gets a little more kiddish later on, but in this one, there's a direct quote that I wrote down, and she says that the monster blood needs to kill the kids, and Great Aunt Catherine is kind of, oh, please take me, but let the kids go. And she says the children will still die, which I was like, damn, that's pretty extreme for a kid's book. Like it's an early teenager book, but I would have read these when I was grade 5, 6, I think, when they first came out. So pretty young. I think I'm like, what did this come out? 92 ish. When was this first printed here? Yeah, 92. So I would have been 5. I probably, I didn't read them right away, but I probably read them pretty early. I probably read them around, 7, 8, latest. So, pretty extreme, pretty exciting part. But basically, they're saved by Trigger, who comes in and kind of runs into the monster blood, which knocks it into Sarah Beth. It kind of just engulfs her and then shrinks down, and she's gone. Trigger starts to return to normal, and they're all just kind of looking away. And when they're kind of like the twins pop out of as well, I'm pretty sure. Which again is just, okay, where'd she go? But they're here, and then it's gone. It doesn't really make a lot of sense at the end. And then they turn, and the monster blood's gone. It just vanishes, and that's kind of the end of it. So that's the end. Trigger saves them, and Sarah Beth is defeated. So basically, I have a lot of problems with the story. As I've said before, I kind of like things that are realistic. I don't mind something fantastical that's kind of built in that way. But the monster blood doesn't really have any explanation. It grows on its own when it wants to. It was just living in this random store, but the Great Aunt created it. Like, how did it get there? Why was it in the store? How did they happen to find it? Why is the store closed now from selling it? Just kind of some weak plot points in there. The twins, I just like, they're kind of a real thing of just like an actual fear, but they don't really do much. and they're just they're there, steal a bike, they beat them up, they get taken by the monster blood. I feel like I remember. I don't really remember the other two books. I feel like they're in the second one, but I could be completely wrong. But I feel like they come back. But yeah, even with the fantastic stuff, like they kind of explain away, because again, she sees the monster blood at the start of the book. It says nothing, but it's like, oh, she's controlled by Sarah Beth, and so she can't, somehow she has the power to restrict her from learning sign language. So I guess she could control the fact that she won't speak out about that. But it's just weird. It's a lot of plot points. I don't really understand what Sarah Beth is doing, why she's staying in this house and just controlling the great aunt. Like, she's so ready to kill the kids. I don't know why she just wouldn't kill the great aunt and just live as a human, but it's a weird one. All that being said, though, I actually enjoyed the story more than I remember. It did drag a little, but there was some good points. Again, I kind of like that it was a little more violent than some of the books I remember, and like an actual villain trying to kill them. The ending of Trigger saving them, that's fine. At least it's something. It's a thing too where, at least it didn't do kind of the double fake out. Like it's a real ending. Something happens that saves them. I do like Evan and Andy's interactions as well. They're just two kids that kind of just find this interesting item and they just play with it. And there's like some back and forth, and Andy kind of trying to save them, getting her bike stolen. It was a nice scene. So as far as that goes, it wasn't as bad as I remember it. But still on my ranking, which from S to D, I think is what we're doing. This one's a C. It's not the worst of the worst. It's got some interesting points, but it's just too kind of sciencey of this monster blood and sorcery and stuff, and that's just not my style. Again, I feel like the short chapters with all of the cliffhangers, it just made the book a little repetitive. I can get how it works for a kid. Where maybe you're only allowed to read a chapter or two at a time, but for someone who could sit down and read the whole thing in one go, it just felt like they were repeating stuff a lot. And yeah, that's kind of it. I kind of mentioned it in my last video that there was one that I read that I remember being bad, and I actually liked it more than I did, and that was it. I thought that book would for sure get a D rating when I did this, and I'm happy to see that it was better than I thought. Luckily, again, I don't remember too many books that are that bad. I've maybe wiped them from my memory. There's only one for sure that I'm looking forward to reading again, in the sense of I don't remember liking it, and I want to see if I like it more now, if I can appreciate it as an adult. Reading children's scary novels. If I can appreciate it for what it is and what Stein was trying to do with the story. But this one, I just feel like it's got too much convenience to it. He does explain a lot of the plot holes, with Aunt Catherine and the monster blood and Sarah Beth. It just, like, yeah, you explain it, but it doesn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things. So, yeah, that's my rating of the book. As for the cover, it's not bad. Decent cover for sure. Kind of creepy. The monster blood coming down the stairs is pretty good. Like I said, I actually kind of like this color combo. And I think I like it more than it just kind of contrasts the green, and I feel like it makes the blood stand out a little more. Whereas in this one, like, it just it seems to flow into it, which I don't like as much. So it's pretty good. I don't think it's quite on the level of some of the ones to come, though. I'm going to give this one a solid B. I think a B is fair. It'd be a high one. It's bordering A. I honestly kind of like that they didn't put any people in it. Just the blood. But I don't know. It just feels like it's missing something. Like, maybe if they had Sarah Beth just poking her paw in it or something like that, I could give it more. But while I think they made the right call on it, it just feels a little bland. I'm curious if they ever put it out for the 2000. I think it was 2007 is the newer ones. If they remade it, what it looks like. But yeah, so that's going to do it. That is my rating of Monster Blood. So up next we got Say Cheese and Die, which is a classic. I think Say Cheese and Die is one that a lot of people remember the story of. So I'm interested in talking about that one because I have some thoughts. But that's going to do it. If you stay all the way through it, I really appreciate you. Again, still working on these. Just kind of just a little, just verbal rambling about these. Hopefully, they get a little more concise, a little more free flowing. Right now, again, I read a bunch of these 3 or 4 months ago, so I've kind of had to make some notes. I've kind of had to refresh myself with some things, so I kind of forget the order. I kind of forget the name of some of the characters, and I have a awful memory. So, the first few will kind of be a little more shoddy of order of what everything happened. But appreciate everyone watching.
Thanks for watching. Please click to check out my other videos, like and subscribe, and come by Twitch under Floyd Mason to join my live streams.